Welcome to the Nope Coach Podcast, episode 355, Bitter or Better. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. I've been wanting to record this episode for months, and given we are on the home stretch, day 355 of 365 days straight, I was like, it may be now or never. And then the episode's called Bitter or Better. That's some irony, at least to me. I had Rob Bell on the show a few months ago, and if I remember, I'll link the episodes in the description on YouTube. Otherwise, you can just scroll, or I trust you can Google Suzanne Culberg, Rob Bell, and find them. He has written a number of books, and he has audio books, and can't speak more highly of him. But something he said on one of the episodes I recorded with him, and I've heard him say on his own show, he has his own podcast, the Robcast. Highly recommend you check that out. Is, do you want to be bitter or better? And yeah, that every time I hear it, I'm like, sometimes I just want to be bitter. Sometimes I just want to add things to my victim resume and be like, all this has happened. It's because of this. It's not my fault. And I just languish in being bitter. And I think we all do that at times. We're human. We make mistakes, and then we want to complain about them, and then we want to blame other people. And I've been with my husband, we've been together for 22 years this year, and I am beyond thankful that he never reminds me of all the times he's like, is this really a good idea, or should you be doing that? And I'm like, yeah, it's great. And it doesn't work out. He never does the I told you so dance. I don't think we could have lasted this long if he did. And he doesn't join me on my victim resume or get all bitter, thankfully. But he also has his own moments because he is also human. And I just think that phrase, do you want to be bitter or better? When you're self-aware enough to notice that you're adding things to your victim resume, to stop and say, yeah, that kind of sucked. Like, it was suboptimal. But how can I learn from this? How can I grow from my mistakes? How can I not do the same thing over and over again? I listened to an audiobook recently called You Should Talk to Someone, or Why Don't You Talk to Someone? Can't remember the exact name. If you Google it, I'm sure you'll find it. And it's written by a therapist who is talking about her experience being a therapist, but also her experience of therapy. And she was saying, she's some famous quote about therapy I hadn't heard, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, before therapy, it's making the same mistakes over and over again and, not learning anything. So I guess being bitter. And after therapy, it's like, oh, what's this new mistake? And I just like, yeah, that's about being better. Doesn't mean there's no mistakes. Doesn't mean that life's perfect and you can ride your unicorn off into the sunset and fart rainbows. But what it does mean is that you don't beat yourself up continually. You have some appropriate remorse, like, yeah, that sucked. That was suboptimal. Now let's move on. Let's not hang out here, carving it into our victim resume like Moses writing it on stone and carrying it around forevermore to show everybody all the stuff that we've done wrong. So, yeah, I'm going to keep this one kind of short today, but I just invite you to think about, because I suppose these last 3 episodes of this show has kind of been inadvertently an unplanned series of 3. I started with, maintain or pain. Do you want to be a person who's in maintenance? So I suppose that links to the better and continual growth, and knowing that, life is a mountain with no peak, and we're going to keep working and keep striving and keep growing, versus I want to wait till I'm in pain. Pain links to the bitter. Then I spoke in the last episode about the time that I got fired and how bitter I was about that for quite some time. And it's interesting, when I wrote my book, The Beginning is Shit, I do mention being fired in that book. I got fired at the time that I was writing it. So it was actually part of the reason that I paused writing the book, because it was going to be like an entire chapter and it was convoluted and it was very blamey, and it was, do not recommend. Glad I deleted that entire part. I shelved the book project, picked it up 3 years later, and that was literally a sentence. Because what's happening in the moment that we're going through something and we are feeling kind of bitter about it, as we get better, as we move through it, as we heal and release it, it just does become a blip on the radar, something in the rearview mirror. It's like, oh yeah, that thing happened. We're not carrying around the shame, the blame, the guilt. We're not beating ourselves up. We're having an appropriate level of remorse. Like, yeah, that kind of sucked. And then move on. Because I think sometimes we end up in this magical thinking. Like we want to get to this place where there's never any hardships and there's never any pain and there's never any discomfort. But what's that? Another quote that I'm probably going to butcher, but like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Something happens, it hurts, it stings, it's painful. But then continuing to ruminate on it, rehash it, that brings it life. So, yeah, today's episode, do you want to be bitter or better? Something to remind yourself of when you catch yourself spinning out and adding things to your victim resume, knowing that nothing's gone wrong. We all do that, but we don't have to hang out there. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're not yet on my newsletter list, come and join me. If you go to my website, it's suzanneculberg.com, SuzanneCulberg. Click on the newsletter. I would love to visit your inbox once a week or so. And the first email you get from me, I ask you a question. I actually will reply to that. It's funny, about 10% of people, so 1 in 10 people who join my list reply to that email. And I was saying to a friend the other day, like, there's not that many. And she's like, do you know what industry standard is? And I was like, I have no idea. She's like, trust me, 10% is heaps. But I never ask a question I don't want the answer to. I'm like, I don't go, comment below with where you're tuning in from or what do you do for a living, because that's not relevant to the discussion. But in the emails, when I do say like hit reply, I want to know and I will reply to you. So yeah, I love hanging out in my email. It's my happy place. So yeah, hope to see you there. Hope to catch you on the next one. Bye for now.